She was still catching her breath from the way he'd taken her, rough and desperate, like a man possessed, when she found the message glowing on his phone. Deliver what I asked for, or Sloane dies screaming. His hand caught her wrist before she could run. I can explain. You have 5 seconds. Before we dive into this tale of passion and secrets, tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because in Tales That Echo, tomorrow's story might just be about you. 3 weeks earlier, Sloane Fontaine had attended hundreds of board meetings in her 28 years, but none had ever made her blood run this cold. The Calloway Tower boardroom stretched before her like a cathedral of glass and steel, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Chicago's skyline in amber light. Her heels clicked against Italian marble as she strode forward, amber eyes blazing, her black Valentino suit tailored to perfection. She had dressed for war. Then she saw him. Beckett Calloway stood with his back to the room, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the windows like some dark prince surveying his kingdom. Even from across the vast space, Sloane felt the air change, charged with a current that made her skin prickle. 10 years since he'd destroyed her at the Fontaine debutante ball, his voice cutting through the crowd like a blade as he called her a pretty decoration with nothing behind the eyes. 10 years since she'd felt anything close to the rage currently burning in her chest. Or perhaps it wasn't rage at all. Beckett turned, and their eyes locked. He was 33 now, and the years had sharpened him into something almost cruel in its perfection. Dark hair pushed back from a face that belonged on Roman coins, ice-blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her armor, a jaw that could cut glass. He wore his power like other men wore cologne. Miss Fontaine? His voice was smooth as expensive whiskey with an edge that promised burns. How kind of you to grace us with your presence. I was under the impression this meeting was mandatory. She moved to the chair opposite him. Though if I'd known you'd be here, I might have reconsidered. Charming as ever. I save my charm for people who deserve it. Quentin Fontaine, Sloane's father, sat at the head of the table looking like he'd aged a decade. His suit hung loose on his frame, and Sloane felt concern spike through her chest. Both companies are facing significant financial challenges, Quentin said quietly. We stand on the brink of bankruptcy. The word hung like a guillotine blade. Bankruptcy. Impossible. Sloane had devoted her entire adult life to her mother's legacy, the foundation Genevieve Fontaine had laid before cancer took her when Sloane was 17. There has to be another way, Sloane said. We've exhausted every option. Quentin's voice broke. Except one. Beckett Calloway leaned forward. A merger. But there's one condition. Beckett pushed off from the windows, moving with predatory grace until he stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker that made her dizzy. A marriage, Barrett announced. Between the two of you, it's the only way to convince investors this merger is permanent. Sloane's blood turned to ice. You want me to marry him, the man who humiliated me in front of everyone I knew? She turned to Beckett. Tell them this is insane. He tilted his head, studying her like a fascinating puzzle. Trust me, princess, this isn't my idea of a fairy tale either. His voice dropped lower, intimate. Then again, we both know you've thought about me in ways that have nothing to do with business. The words hit like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, but because they were true.
You're delusional, Sloane hissed. Am I? Beckett stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Then tell me why you're trembling. Tell me why you haven't looked away from me since you walked into this room. Enough! Quentin's voice carried exhaustion. Sloane, I wouldn't ask if there was any other choice. Later, alone with her father, she saw tears in his eyes for the first time in her life. I'm sick, he said quietly. Really sick. The doctors are running tests, but something is very wrong. This merger isn't just about the company. It's about making sure you're protected when I'm gone. Dad, she whispered, her own eyes burning. I know Beckett hurt you, but he's brilliant, ruthless when he needs to be. He will protect what's his. If you're his wife, he'll move heaven and earth to keep you safe. Please, his eyes begged, for your mother's memory. And Sloane knew she had no choice at all. 2 days later, she arrived at Prescott and Associates for the contract signing. Sloane dressed in black, mourning her freedom in Dior and diamonds. She arrived exactly on time. Beckett was 20 minutes late. When he strolled into the conference room, Sloane's jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. His tie was loosened, hair mussed, and a smudge of lipstick on his collar, bright red against white fabric. He'd been with another woman, right before signing their marriage contract. "So nice of you to join us," she said, voice dripping acid. "I hope we're not interrupting anything important." Beckett's smile was razor sharp. Nothing that couldn't wait. His eyes traveled down her black dress, slow and deliberate. "Mourning already, Princess? We haven't even said our vows." "I'm mourning my dignity." Sterling Prescott, the silver-haired senior partner, slid contracts across the table. "The prenuptial agreement. You'll share the penthouse in Calloway Tower for 1 year minimum." "And sleeping arrangements?" Sloane demanded. Sterling looked uncomfortable. "The contract doesn't specify separate bedrooms." "We're having separate bedrooms," Sloane said firmly, looking directly at Beckett. He leaned back, the picture of arrogance. "We can have separate bedrooms, Princess." His voice dropped to a register that made her stomach flip. "But we both know you'll end up in mine eventually." "You're delusional." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, gaze burning. "Look me in the eye right now and tell me you don't want me. Tell me you haven't imagined what it would be like between us." Sloane opened her mouth to deny it. The words stuck in her throat. She couldn't look him in the eye while lying, and they both knew it. She grabbed the fountain pen and signed every page, her signature sharp and furious. When Beckett leaned over to sign, his lips brushed her ear. "1 year in my penthouse, Mrs. Calloway. Try not to enjoy it too much." Heat pooled low in her belly. She fled toward the elevator before he caught up, his hand wrapping around her upper arm and spinning her to face him. They were alone in the hallway. "Let go of me," she hissed. "Not until you stop running." "I'm leaving because I can't stand to be in the same room as you." His grip gentled, thumb stroking the inside of her arm through fabric. "You're afraid of what might happen if we're alone too long." "Nothing is going to happen." He pulled her closer until she felt every hard plane of his body and the unmistakable evidence that he wanted her just as badly. "Sooner or later, you're going to stop fighting this, and when you do, I'm going to make you admit every filthy thing you've ever imagined about us." Then he released her and walked away, leaving Sloane gasping against the wall, her entire body on fire. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of Calloway Tower, a sprawling expanse of glass and steel and cold modern luxury. Sloane's belongings were stacked in her designated bedroom. Beckett disappeared into the master suite without a word. At 2 in the morning, she gave up on sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, felt his thumb on her pulse point, heard his voice promising things that should have repulsed her. She pulled on a champagne silk robe and padded barefoot through the dark penthouse. Then the lights went out completely. A blackout. The entire building plunged into darkness, Chicago's skyline the only light, a glittering sea of emergency beacons and distant stars. "Scared of the dark, Princess?" His voice came from behind her, low and rough with sleep. She spun to find Beckett in his bedroom doorway, wearing nothing but low-slung sweatpants, his chest bare and shadowed. "I'm not scared of anything," she lied. "Really?" He moved toward her slowly, a predator stalking prey. "Because your heart is racing. I can see it, the pulse in your throat." "I feel nothing when you're near me." "Liar." His fingers circled her wrist, where her pulse hammered visibly, thumb brushing back and forth over that frantic beat. "I never forgave you," she said suddenly, "for what you did at that ball. I was 18. I thought you saw me as more than Quentin Fontaine's daughter, and then you stood there and made me feel small and stupid and worthless." Silence stretched between them, suffocating. When Beckett spoke, his voice was stripped of all arrogance, raw in a way she'd never heard before. "I know. I don't expect forgiveness." She was startled by the pain in his eyes. His jaw was tight, and there was something almost vulnerable in the set of his shoulders. "I wanted you," he said quietly, "even then. You looked at me like something worth admiring, and I knew I'd destroy that light in your eyes eventually, so I did it first, before I could hurt you worse." "That doesn't make it okay." "I know it doesn't." His forehead dropped until it almost touched hers, his breath warm against her lips. "I'm done pretending. I've wanted you for 10 years, Sloane, since you were too young and I was too broken." "Have you ever wanted someone you knew could destroy you?" She rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and questioning at first, then harder when he groaned against her mouth. Beckett's control shattered. His hands slid into her hair, angling her head so he could kiss her deeper, his tongue stroking against hers in a rhythm that made her knees buckle. He backed her against the wall. "Say you want this," he demanded hoarsely, mouth moving to her throat. "I want you," she gasped. "God help me, I want you." His hands were sliding down her silk robe when his phone buzzed on the hallway table. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. "Beckett," she whispered. He cursed viciously and pulled away, chest heaving. The name on the screen made his expression shudder completely. Delilah Carrington. "I need to take this," he said, voice flat. He walked toward the master suite, but his words drifted back through the darkness. "I told you not to contact me here. She can't know about this. Not yet." Sloane's blood turned to ice. Whatever fragile thing had been building between them, it felt like just another lie.
The next morning, Sloane woke to an empty penthouse. Beckett's assistant delivered a message. He would meet her at the Art Institute Gala that evening for their first public appearance as a married couple. The City Hall wedding had taken place that afternoon, a perfunctory legal ceremony with Sterling Prescott and his paralegal as witnesses. It lasted 7 minutes. Beckett had kissed her cheek, cold and formal, as if the night before had never happened. Sloane spent the remaining hours doing exactly what she'd promised herself she wouldn't, investigating Delilah Carrington. What she discovered made her stomach turn. Delilah was a billionaire in her own right, founder of a luxury antiquities firm that had gone global 5 years ago. She was 32, stunning in the way of women who could afford personal trainers and dermatologists on speed dial. And according to every gossip blog and society column Sloane could find, she and Beckett have an intense history that had ended mysteriously 2 years ago. The photos made it clear enough. Delilah and Beckett at charity galas, at private parties, boarding his jet together. In every image, Delilah looked at him like he belonged to her. Sloane closed her laptop hard enough to crack the screen. For the gala, she chose a gold gown that hugged every curve, with a neckline that dipped dangerously low and a slit that revealed nearly her entire leg. She wore her hair down in loose waves, applied crimson lipstick with the precision of war paint. She was absolutely dressing for Beckett. The car service dropped her at the Art Institute, where cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions she ignored. Inside, Chicago's elite mingled under crystal chandeliers. She felt him before she saw him. The air changed, charged with electricity, and then Beckett was there,
stopping mid-conversation to stare at her like she'd reached into his chest and stolen his breath. He crossed to her in long strides, his hand finding the small of her back with proprietary ease. "You wore that to torture me," he accused, voice low. "Consider it payback for the lipstick on your collar." His jaw clenched. "That wasn't what it looked like." "Really? Because it looked like you slept with someone right before signing our contract." "I didn't." His fingers flexed against her back. "I went to see Delilah, but not for the reason you think." Before she could respond, a voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Congratulations on the wedding, darling." Delilah Carrington appeared beside them, breathtaking in red silk. She kissed Beckett's cheek with an intimacy that made Sloane's blood boil, then turned venomous green eyes on her. "How quaint! Beckett marrying for business." Her smile could strip paint. "I had no idea you were the marrying type, darling." Beckett's hand tightened on Sloane's waist. "Delilah, this is unexpected." "Is it?" Delilah's smile sharpened. "We need to talk, privately." Sloane started to pull away, but Beckett pulled her closer instead. "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of my wife." Wife. The word sent an unexpected thrill through her. Delilah's expression turned venomous. "Still keeping secrets, Beckett? How long before she figures out what you really are?" "That's enough." "Oh, but she's already in it." Delilah's voice dropped to a whisper. "She just doesn't know it yet." Then she walked away, leaving tension crackling in her wake. "What the hell was that?" Sloane hissed. "Not here." Beckett steered her toward the dance floor as the orchestra shifted to a waltz. "Dance with me." It wasn't a request. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so close she could feel every hard plane of her body. "Delilah is dangerous," he murmured against her temple. "Stay away from her." "Who is she to you?" His jaw clenched. "Someone who knows things about me that could destroy everything." "What things?" He looked at her with something like regret. "Things I'm not ready to tell you yet, but I need you to trust me." "Trust you?" She almost laughed. "I don't even know you." "You know me better than anyone." There was raw honesty in his voice. "You see parts of me I hide from everyone else." "Have you ever trusted someone who gave you every reason not to?"
3 days after the City Hall wedding, the board called an emergency meeting. Sloane arrived early, determined to prove marriage hadn't made her soft. She was wrong. The conference room was packed with board members wearing expressions that ranged from uncomfortable to hostile. Quentin sat at the head of the table, looking devastated. "What's going on?" she demanded. Sterling Prescott cleared his throat. "Evidence has surfaced suggesting financial improprieties within Fontaine Fine Art, specifically embezzlement of company funds into offshore accounts." "That's ridiculous." "The transfers were authorized using your credentials." Sterling slid a folder across the table. $3 million over the past 6 months moved to an account in the Caymans registered in your name. The world tilted. Sloane opened the folder with shaking hands, transaction records bearing her digital signature, account statements showing her name. "This is fake," she said. "Someone's setting me up." "The forensic accountants have verified authenticity," a board member said coldly. "This is bullshit, and you know it." Beckett's voice cut through the room like a whip. He stood at the far end of the table, and Sloane had been so focused on the accusations she hadn't seen him. "Someone is framing her. Instead of finding out who, you vultures are circling to pick the bones." A board member interjected. "Mr. Calloway, the evidence is fabricated." Beckett moved to stand behind Sloane's chair, hands settling on her shoulders, possessive, protective. "She is mine to protect. I'm calling for an independent investigation before any vote." But the damage was done. The board voted to suspend Sloane pending investigation, stripping her of all access. She sat frozen as her life's work was ripped away, as her father looked at her with confusion and hurt.
She made it to the penthouse before she started throwing crystal glasses against marble floors, watching them shatter into 1,000 pieces that matched how she felt inside. Beckett found her in the ruins, mascara streaming down her face. "They think I'm a thief," she choked out. "My own father looked at me like a stranger." He reached for her, but she shoved him hard. "Maybe Delilah was right. Maybe I don't know anything about you. How do I know you didn't set me up?" Hurt flashed across his face. "You think I would do that? I don't know what to think anymore." He crossed to her in 2 strides, framing her face with both hands. "I know who did this, and I swear to you, Sloane, I will burn their entire world down for touching you." "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" His forehead dropped to hers. "Because you're mine now. Contract or not, you're mine, and I protect what belongs to me." Then he was kissing her, fierce and claiming. "Pack a bag," he said when they broke apart. "We're leaving." "Where?" "My island. We need to disappear while my investigators work. You're not safe here."
Beckett's private island sat in the middle of Lake Michigan, a fortress of glass and stone accessible only by helicopter. They arrived as the sun set in shades of amber and gold. No staff, no cameras, just the 2 of them, alone. They sat on the terrace with wine between them, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Sloane felt like she could breathe. "My mother died when I was 12, Beckett said suddenly, staring at the water. "Cancer, like yours. My father shut down after that, became this cold, calculating machine. I learned early that love was weakness." Sloane listened, watching fading light play across his face. "I built walls, made myself into what he wanted, ruthless, successful, empty." He finally looked at her. "Then I met you at that debutante ball. You smiled at me like I was human. It terrified me. So you destroyed me first." "Yes. Raw honesty. I'm not proud of it, but I'm telling you now so you understand. Everything I've done, it's because I'm broken, and I don't know how to feel this much without being afraid it will destroy me." "Feel what?" she whispered. "This." He reached for her hand. "You, Sloane, you've haunted me for 10 years. A storm rolled in after midnight, thunder and waves crashing against the shore. Sloane woke disoriented, heart pounding with childhood terror. She'd nearly drowned at 8. The fear never left. Strong arms wrapped around her, lifting her against a solid chest. Beckett carried her to his bedroom, setting her on the bed with surprising gentleness. "You're safe," he murmured. "I've got you." "I can't breathe. The water." "Listen to my heartbeat. Match your breathing to mine." She clung to him, face pressed against his bare chest, focusing on the steady thrum beneath her ear. Gradually, the panic receded, replaced by awareness of how closely they were pressed together. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark with want. "Sloane," he warned. She kissed him instead. They made love through the storm, desperate and tender, everything she'd never known she needed. Afterward, they lay tangled together, while rain pounded overhead. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he said quietly. "It terrifies me." "Good." She pressed a kiss to his chest. "You've terrified me since I was 18. When she woke, pale morning light filtered through the windows. Beckett was in the shower, and his phone lay on the nightstand, buzzing. She reached for it without thinking. The message made her blood freeze. "Deliver what I asked for, or Sloane dies screaming." If stories about love, betrayal, and secrets that cut deep echo something inside you, you're exactly where you belong.
Subscribe now, because the truth is just beginning to surface. She read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper like a blade. The shower cut off. Beckett emerged, wrapped in a towel. He saw her holding his phone and went very still. "What did you promise?" Sloane asked, voice shaking. "What are you supposed to deliver, and why will I die if you don't?" The devastation on his face told her everything. Whatever was happening, it was worse than she'd ever imagined.
Sloane was already moving toward the door when his hand caught her wrist. "I can explain. You have 5 seconds." Beckett's face was drained of color, water still dripping from his hair onto bare shoulders. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle lap of water against the shore and the distant cry of mourning gulls. "I married you to save your life," he said, "and I will burn this city to ashes before I let anyone touch you." She should have been terrified. Instead, her treacherous heart whispered, "What if he's telling the truth?" "That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters." He reached for her, but she pulled back. "No, I want the truth, all of it." Pain flickered across his face. "Months ago, before the merger was proposed, Delilah came to me with a deal. She wanted access to your mother's final art collection, pieces she claimed were stolen from her family decades ago. She said if I helped her acquire them through the merger, she'd make me the sole owner of both companies." Sloane's blood turned to ice. "And you agreed?" "I agreed to consider it." His jaw tightened. "But that was before I knew what she really wanted, before I understood she'd stop at nothing, including hurting you. So the marriage was her idea, originally. The admission hung between them like poison. She suggested it as a way to bind our families, to give me access to Fontaine's assets. But everything changed when I realized she was willing to destroy you to get what she wanted." Sloane felt sick. "You used me." "I protected you." He gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his gaze. "The moment I understood her plan, I started working against her. The marriage became my way of keeping you close, keeping you safe. By lying to me? By doing whatever it took to keep you breathing." Before she could respond, the sound of a helicopter shattered the morning stillness. Beckett's expression shifted from desperate to deadly. "She's here." "Who?" "Delilah." He was already moving, pulling on clothes with efficient speed. "Stay inside. Lock the door." "Like hell." Sloane grabbed his arm. "I'm done hiding from truths that concern my own life." Something fierce flickered in his eyes. "God, you're magnificent when you're angry." "I'm furious. There's a difference." They reached the terrace as Delilah's helicopter touched down, whipping their hair in the rotor wash. She emerged looking immaculate in white linen, flanked by 2 men the size of small buildings. "What a touching scene," Delilah called out. "The happy couple, playing house while Rome burns." "Get off my island," Beckett said, his voice carrying enough threat to make the guards shift. "Not until you deliver what you promised." Delilah's green eyes slid to Sloane. "Has he told you yet about how he helped plan your little forced marriage?" "He told me everything." "Did he?" Delilah laughed. "Did he tell you about your father's insulin?" Sloane's heart stopped. "What about my father's insulin?" Delilah's smile turned venomous. "Ask your husband who's been making dear Quentin so sick." "Is forgiveness possible when the lie was meant to protect you?"
"What is she talking about?" Sloane's voice shook. "What does she mean about my father's insulin?" The devastation on Beckett's face told her everything she needed to know and nothing she wanted to hear. "Your father is being poisoned," Beckett said quietly. "Has been for at least 6 months. Someone's been tampering with his insulin, adding a compound that mimics natural decline." The world tilted beneath Sloane's feet. "You knew?" "I found out 3 weeks ago, right before the merger was finalized." 3 weeks! She laughed, the sound broken. 3 weeks? You've known for 3 weeks that someone is killing my father, and you said nothing? I was gathering evidence, trying to figure out who was administering the poison without alerting Delilah. Oh, please. Delilah stepped closer, clearly enjoying the destruction. He didn't tell you because he's been playing both sides. That's not true. Beckett's voice was raw. Sloane, I swear. Don't. She held up a hand, tears burning her eyes. She turned to Delilah. Who's doing it? Who's poisoning my father? His physician, Dr. Thatcher Webb, such a loyal family friend. Delilah's satisfaction was palpable. Been treating your father for years. Why? The word tore out of Sloane. What could you possibly gain? Everything your mother stole from mine. Delilah's mask slipped, revealing pure hatred. Those paintings in your vault, the Fontaine collection, they never were your mother's. My grandmother, Helena Carrington, created them. Your parents destroyed her, stole her work, and covered it up. Sloane shook her head. That's impossible. I have proof, documents, photographs, your parents' own correspondence. Delilah's voice dropped. Cooperate with me, and your father receives the antidote. Fight me, and he'll be dead within the week. Silence stretched between them. Then Beckett stepped forward, positioning himself between Sloane and Delilah. Here's what's going to happen, he said, terrifyingly calm. You're going to leave this island. You're going to give us the antidote, and you're going to pray I don't find you before the authorities do. Delilah laughed. With what leverage? With this. Beckett pulled out his phone and hit play. Her own voice filled the air, discussing the poisoning, the conspiracy, the threats, every word recorded. Delilah's face went white. That's inadmissible. I don't need it to be admissible. I need it to destroy you. For the first time, Delilah looked afraid. 24 hours later, Sloane stood in the bathroom of the Peninsula Chicago, staring at her reflection. The Fontaine Foundation Gala was in full swing downstairs. 300 of Chicago's elite gathered in glittering finery, completely unaware that a trap was being set. The antidote had been administered. Quentin was stable, recovering in a private hospital room with round-the-clock security. Dr. Thatcher Webb was in federal custody, having confessed everything. Now it was time for the final act. Sloane smoothed her crimson gown, the color of blood, the color of war, and stepped into the ballroom. She found Delilah near the champagne fountain, resplendent in black velvet, working the room like nothing was wrong. Mrs. Calloway. Delilah's smile didn't reach her eyes. I wasn't sure you'd have the nerve. I never miss my own party. How brave. Delilah leaned closer. You should know, if anything happens to me tonight, certain documents proving your parents' crimes will be released. I'm counting on it. Confusion flickered across Delilah's face. You're right. Sloane's voice carried to nearby guests. My parents did something terrible. They destroyed your grandmother, stole her work, and covered it up for decades. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameras turned. What are you doing? Delilah hissed. What my parents should have done years ago. Sloane raised her voice. The Fontaine collection will be returned to its rightful owners. My family's foundation will compensate everyone harmed by our deception. The room erupted. You think confession makes it go away? Delilah snarled. No. Beckett appeared at Sloane's side. But this does. Federal agents flooded the room. Delilah Carrington, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, extortion, and fraud. Delilah's composure shattered. I was the victim. Her family destroyed mine. Your grandmother was wronged, Sloane said quietly, and we're going to make it right. But you tried to murder my father. That's not justice, that's vengeance. As agents handcuffed her, Delilah screamed a final truth. Ask Beckett Calloway what he knew. Your husband's father was in on it from the beginning. Sloane felt Beckett go rigid beside her. When their eyes met, she saw the devastating realization. This wasn't over, not even close. Would you want to know the truth, even if it destroyed everything you thought you knew?
The weeks that followed were a hurricane of investigations, confessions, and painful truths. Beckett Calloway, confronted with evidence of his involvement in the original cover-up, broke down in his study, surrounded by lawyers and shame. He'd been 25 when Quentin and Genevieve Fontaine had approached him, young, hungry, and willing to look the other way in exchange for a stake in their growing empire. He'd never touched the stolen artwork, never profited directly from Helena Carrington's destruction, but he'd known. He'd stayed silent, and that silence had allowed the wound to fester for 3 decades. "I'm sorry," Barrett said to his son, looking older than Sloane had ever seen him. "I thought I was protecting the family. I was just protecting myself." Beckett said nothing, just walked out, his jaw tight enough to shatter. He didn't speak to his father for 2 weeks, but he never left Sloane's side. The 1-year contract expired on a Tuesday. Sloane stood in the penthouse where everything had started, the same floor-to-ceiling windows, the same Italian marble, the same city sprawling beneath them like a kingdom neither of them had asked for. Beckett found her on the terrace at sunset, the sky painted in shades of amber and rose. "The lawyers called," she said without turning. "The merger is complete. Both companies are stable. The contract is officially fulfilled." She heard him approach, felt the warmth of him at her back. "I know. Which means we can file for divorce whenever we want." She finally turned to face him. "You're free, Beckett. You did what you promised. You protected me. You saved my father. You even helped me expose my own family's sins." Her voice cracked. "You don't owe me anything else." He stared at her with those ice-blue eyes that had haunted her since she was 18 years old. "Is that what you want?" he asked quietly. "Freedom from me?" "I'm asking what you want." "You." The word was immediate, absolute. "I want you, Sloane, not because of any contract, not because our fathers made a deal, not because the board expects it." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the vulnerability he'd spent a lifetime hiding. "I want you because you're the only person who's ever seen me, really seen me, and stayed anyway." Tears burned her eyes. "You lied to me. You kept secrets that almost destroyed us." "I know." He cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "I know, and I will spend the rest of my life earning back your trust if you let me. I'll growl, I'll beg, I'll burn down anyone who threatens you and build you an empire from the ashes." A broken laugh escaped her. "That's not exactly a normal proposal." "I'm not a normal man." His forehead dropped to hers. "But I'm yours, Sloane, completely, irrevocably, catastrophically yours." She kissed him then, soft at first, then deeper, pouring 10 years of longing and 3 weeks of fear and a lifetime of love into the press of their lips. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered, "I don't want a divorce." "Thank God." His voice was wrecked with relief. "Because I already had the ring." He pulled a velvet box from his pocket. Inside,
an emerald surrounded by diamonds, the exact shade of green as the dress she'd worn at 18 when she'd first looked at him like he was worth admiring. "Marry me again," he said. "Not because we have to, because we choose to. A real ceremony, real vows, real forever." "Yes," the word came out on a sob. "Yes, you impossible, infuriating, beautiful man. Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, then lifted her into his arms and carried her inside, toward the bedroom that had always been hers, that would now be theirs. They renewed their vows 3 months later at her mother's gallery, surrounded by artwork that had finally been returned to Helena Carrington's descendants. Quentin walked her down the aisle, healthy and whole. Barrett sat in the back row, still working to earn his son's forgiveness. And when Beckett said "I do" for the second time, his voice broke on the words. Afterward, holding her on the dance floor while their families watched, he whispered, "You saved me, Sloane Fontaine Calloway. You saw the monster and loved me anyway." "You were never a monster," she pressed her lips to his jaw. "You were just a man too afraid to be loved." "Not anymore."